Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. Every night on this show, I get to introduce you to an interesting person, and a young lady that I think very highly of. Said, my boss is fantastic. You got to meet her. And so I want to introduce you tonight to a very impressive individual, Amanda Dorenberg. Is that a correct pronunciation, Dorenberg?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
She has a reputation for disrupting traditional industries via new and emerging technology. She's currently the president of the Canadian Out-of-Home Marketing and Measurement Bureau, aka COMB, COMMB. And she's here to tell us a little bit more about marketing and marketing out of home and measurement, and a little bit about her story. So maybe I could just start off by asking you, how come you've got this reputation for disrupting traditional industries?
It's such a funny story, actually. I started in out of home, which is a very traditional media format, over 10 years ago. And I have a background in an education in technology, computer programming, and systems analysis, as well as blended into marketing, media, and communications. And I've always loved how technology can fuel innovation, change. It can drive revenue generation. It can drive social adoption and various different other components. And when I joined the out-of-home industry, I saw that it was very traditional and lacking in the technology innovation sector. And so my first soiree was introducing, again, this is 10 plus years ago, mobile in-app advertising in combination with traditional static murals and out-of-home beautiful wall mural advertisements. And that was highly disruptive. So from there, I sort of continued the trend to spot the gaps within how we could, from an out-of-home industry, merge and compete with the online or native online advertising space, where they've got an immense amount of analytics and attribution components. So I created a first-to-market audience intelligence platform with an organization that was ultimately acquired by Outfront Media, which is a large publicly traded out-of-home media company.
Okay, hold on. A audience intelligence? What's that?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. I speak about it like everyone else. It was a first-to-market application that essentially merged data analytics from cellular carrier, mobile application data, and a few other data analytics providers to understand consumer movements within the range of visibility of digital out-of-home assets.
So you're not analyzing whether people are intelligent, you're giving some intelligence on the people.
Correct, yes. So if you're driving along the Gardner Expressway, as an example, and you're in what we call in this industry Billboard alley, so you've got a plethora of static and digital, beautiful billboards. On the digital side, we would understand the mobile devices that were traveling along the Gardner, whether they were going eastbound or westbound, and then understand the device's origin. So we deemed that as a device that was persistently static during sleeping hours over a 12-month period, all completely anonymized, and absolutely no personal information is acquired during this process. It was more about movements of certain devices. And then from that, we matched it with StatsCan data and census data to understand that, a billboard on the Gardner saw this particular demographic, or a digital asset in Vancouver saw a very different asset. So that was highly disruptive, about 7 years ago, and was quite fun. So from there, I think I've just continued the tech disruption reputation.
Okay, so let's go back to basics. Out of home advertising or marketing is what? Anything off of your TV and radio?
Correct. Just think about when you leave your home, what are you looking at? So you're looking at street furniture, transit shelters, the TTC passing by us in Toronto, subway advertisements, mobile advertisements is considered out of home, but it's a different format of out of home. anything that you see in the real world, the offline world, if you will.
Offline, but mobile's not offline.
Mobile's not offline, but you could consume that in or out of your home. So right. The out of home, traditional out of home definition would be anything that would be deemed to be seen in the real world.
Okay, so one question would be, with COVID-19 and everyone stuck at home, has out of home advertising expenditures gone down dramatically?
Absolutely. In 2020, they did. Yes, huge. It was a huge impact for the industry in 2020. And we've recently released a couple of reports actually that indicate the recovery for 2021. So we released it, I think it was last week actually, the movement patterns. So we've got over 17 major markets from a static or traditional out of home capacity, and all markets that have digital out of home reported on. And we're seeing now tremendous increase, but certainly 2020 was a dramatic year. It was unfortunately impactful for our industry.
And yet you think it's going to come back?
It's already started to come back, yes. Recovery process will be long and slow, in my opinion. I think, we have a great relationship at Comb with Insider Intelligence, which is eMarketer's analytics division. And we stay very close and on the pulse of what they're releasing. I don't disagree that it will be a slow recovery. We're estimating a 3 to 4 year full recovery to surpass 2019 pre-pandemic ad spends in the Canadian landscape. But we are seeing a very strong recovery thus far in Q2, early Q2 of 2021 so far.
We're chatting tonight with Amanda Dorenberg. She's the president of the Canadian Out-of-Home Marketing and Measurement Bureau. She's a disruptor of old traditional industries with new technology, which is obviously an interesting topic. And so we're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Amanda in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. We're talking about disrupting old industries tonight with Amanda Dorenberg. She's the president of the Canadian Out-of-Home Marketing and Measurement Bureau. Interesting, I got to tell you, Amanda, that a friend of mine, a young lady who I've got to know, is one of your employees. And I think she's reached out to me like half a dozen times saying, my boss is brilliant. You gotta interview her. So you've got a fan. What is it that you do that creates fans from your employees?
I'm not sure. I think for me, culture is everything, and just fostering transparency within, subordinate employee culture. I don't even like to say that term. Like, I don't consider myself a boss. I consider myself an equal to all of my team members, and everyone has full transparency to challenge me on any initiatives or to promote new initiatives. I think culture is the number one thing for me. And I know who you're speaking about. She's so sweet, and I absolutely adore her. She's a brilliant, brilliant mind. And I am so looking forward to watching her career flourish.
So how do you create a positive culture? Is it through interaction? Is it through meetings? Is it through team building exercises? Or is it just you and your personality?
I'm not one for the traditional team building exercises. I find them a bit cheesy, to be frank. I definitely am more of just a relatable conversationalist. It's definitely more about my approach to any interaction from a business or personal standpoint is about relating with those who I'm speaking with. So whether you are senior to me, my board, whom I report to, or someone on my team, I treat you all the same. I just want to relate. I want to understand, where you're coming from, what drives you, what motivates you, what impacts you personally. Empathy is a huge component to me. I think we all, especially as leaders, have to have empathy with anyone that we're working with, above us, below us, the same as us as a traditional title. Empathy is huge. We have to have consideration, compassion, and just be relatable. And I think that
Empathy,
drives culture.
relatable are not, words that you would have described to the typical boss ever before. Is this?
I'm not a typical boss. I think you can see that with the crazy hair and the tattoos, which are hidden by my blazer. But yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you, my hair is getting too long because of the COVID restrictions. Either you found an underground something or other, or you've got a great do-it-yourself technique.
I do the fade myself. Yeah.
I won't ask you to clarify exactly how you got your haircut, because otherwise I'll be asking how I can get my haircut. So tell me a little bit about what motivates you. What, you said that, it's key to understand what motivates people and what they want to achieve in life, what their goals and ambitions are. What motivates you?
I love a huge challenge. Give me like the impossible challenge for, the traditional employee. And that's something that I thrive upon. I love being the person who can say, yes, I will 100% own this. I will take on the responsibility, the risk. If it fails or if it succeeds, I'll put my name on it. I love the challenge of changing something, the challenge of taking something that is, has one reputation and pivoting it into something that's so fresh and new and innovative. I thrive in a place or an opportunity that has just such an immense unknown, where some people would be intimidated by. I find that so exciting.
So you're
I love that.
Out of home marketing. Some people think that whether it's we're in a fourth industrial revolution and data and artificial intelligence, et cetera, are going to take over the world, or just other people have said that we've incurred, 10 or 12 months, 10 or 12 years of digitization in 10 or 12 months in the past year. As you look at how technology has changed our lives so dramatically, the way we interact right now, to working from home, to online buying, et cetera, how do you think your business is going to change in the next couple of years?
It's a fantastic question. I mean, I answer a lot of panels on Forbes Tech Council and many others. And this question comes up a lot, not necessarily specific to out of home, but from my perspective, our industry is drastically changing. We're undergoing, a digital transformation. And it's something that has not happened in decades within our industry. The onset of programmatic digital out of home has really been exacerbated over the past 12 to 18 months, I would say. COVID certainly impacted that. It was a trending topic pre-COVID, but I feel the flexibility, the scalability of programmatic digital out of home.
What's programmatic digital out of home?
It would be the equivalent to online advertising purchasing, where you don't actually have to talk one-on-one to a physical human to purchase a campaign. You can actually execute things systematically through a platform that's very intuitive, and you can select your audience segmentation, your audience targeting, your various KPIs that you wish to achieve during your campaign, similar to how online has been operating for many, many years. That's recently come to the offline out-of-home space over the last 7 years. It's been more widely adopted globally over the past 3 to 5 years. And COVID has certainly exacerbated that adoption, because it certainly allows you can log into an online platform and pause your campaign based on consumer movements or trends in various different patterns.
So this is how an advertiser actually buys out of home media. And that is what you're saying is becoming digital.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's about the easeability and scalability within the media formats that is absolutely being transformed right now, whether it's a digital format or whether it's a static traditional media format like a mural or a poster or a transit shelter that is
so
static.
if I'm buying a Facebook ad or a YouTube ad or something, a Google ad, I can pick the demographic that I want to target. How can you
Correct.
pick a demographic with a billboard?
It's a great question. And so we're leveraging very similar insights that, or methodologies, I should say, that the online space are using, where we're looking at consumer behavior. So when I mentioned previously the audience intelligence platform that we launched, that's exactly what the industry has adopted. And that's what Comb has implemented and will recently be, or upcoming launch of such insights. So it essentially allows us to understand cellular devices and consumer movement in front of static digital billboard out-of-home locations, place-based, which are defined as like indoor networks. So it could be a restaurant, a campus, a fitness center, et cetera. So whether you're in a place-based network or whether you're looking at outdoor networks, we're observing across the country various different movements of cellular devices and consumer behaviors.
So when I'm driving down the Gardiner Expressway and then I park and then I go into a restaurant, are you telling me that you know where I've been?
I don't know you personally, Brian, but it's an aggregate observation.
But you're
so
saying
essentially,
you know enough of the me's that drive down the Gardiner Expressway that you can tell people what demographic is driving down the Gardiner Expressway.
right. And so it's the compilation of device movement that's paired with Statistics Canada information. So again, none of it is in any way infringing on any type of privacy. It's more about observing a movement of an anonymized device that gets correlated to a postal code. And then the postal codes, because those are, they have 20 plus at least households within each postal code, get correlated to the StatsCan demographic data. So we're able to actually provide.
You don't know if I've driven down the Gardiner Expressway, but you know if one of 20 people from my neighborhood is driven down the Gardiner Expressway.
Correct. We would know if someone from your postal code passed down the Gardiner Expressway. And when we look at the postal code.
What restaurant and when.
Correct. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So it's really interesting. When you actually look at the science behind it, it's so interesting to evaluate and take it. It's really taking the same concept of the online space and bringing it to the offline space. Like, think about when you, as consumers, or when us, I shouldn't say you, when us as consumers, we do a Google search of, Adidas footwear. I need some new sandals today. So I'm looking at Adidas, or I'm looking at Aldo, or I'm looking at Hudson's Bay, whatever the case may be. The next time you log onto your web browser, you get served advertisements for sandals, the same product that you search for, because they're leveraging your IP, and Google is providing various different search criteria. It's essentially taking that concept and bringing it to the offline world, where it's more delivering relevant content to an offline consumer, meaning you're out of your home, you're not attached to your laptop or your desktop, you're not looking at your phone when you're driving down a highway. We're just understanding that, you passed by this board, you went into an Adidas store, so you probably, the next time you pass by a billboard, on aggregate, it's not one-to-one again, but you might like to see an Adidas ad. So it's taking the same theory, but applying it to a one-to-many scenario.
Now, I understand GPS technology such that you might be able to track all these mobile phones traveling down the Gardiner Expressway, but how can you pinpoint people to specific retail stores?
So it's a correlation. Once you pass through what's called a polygon, so essentially, if you pass down the Gardiner Expressway and you see an advertisement for X brand, your device is anonymously, I'm going to say, tagged, for lack of a better definition, and it's observed to where your next observation point is. And this is done via all of the mobile applications that we so adore and love and use every day. You opt into location services, so it's a totally voluntary process where you're providing on your own will your location services or your geospatial data. And essentially, once you pass through a polygon, if you've got a mobile application running in the background while you enter, you know, an Adidas store or a grocery store or whatever retail store that you happen to go within, we can actually observe that as marketers. So it's not just myself or my organization, but many of us from a marketing standpoint leverage the same type of technology. So we observe you to your next point of movement and then can correlate a lift, as we call it, in you were exposed to an advertisement for X brand, and then you happened to walk into that brand's retail store.
Fascinating. That's really quite interesting. Billboards aren't typically thought of as high tech. Have billboards changed?
Digital, absolutely. Yes. So static, I like to delineate between traditional and digital. So traditional billboards would encompass anything that's not like dynamic content where you're seeing a rotational advertisement, you've got 100% share of voice. So even that has absolutely evolved from an innovation standpoint. But for this topic, I'll focus specifically on digital because it would relate to programmatic digital. And there is a huge onset of Adtech, data tech, MarTech advancements within our space. And it's really about enhancing.
Hold it. You gave me like 3 or 4 texts. Let's go through them slowly and explain what they are.
Adtech, meaning advertising technology. So the technology that would be in the planning, execution, and buying capacity of our industry.
Okay.
MarTech, which would be marketing technologies. So that would be more on the geospatial audience profile segmentation, evaluating things like reach versus frequency, meaning how expansive is your reach of audience in the out-of-home space versus the frequency that you're communicating with them. And then data tech would be the onslaught of ingesting big data into the out-of-home space. It's similar and to sort of bridge the gap in the omni-channel media space.
So
3 huge acronyms.
What's omni-channel?
Omni-channel is essentially all media formats. So we talk about, or I specifically in my industry are focused on out-of-home advertising. Yet when we look at a global or a regional brand or media agency, they're planning in various different media formats. They're not only looking at the out-of-home space, they're looking at online, native, you know, they might be looking at experiential, they might be looking at various different other formats. And so that's where we say omni-channel, because we're looking.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say we're looking at enhancing the data side of things so that it's equivalent and on par with various other media formats, whether it's TV, broadcast, online, native, et cetera.
You used the word ingest big data. Ingest. Do you really eat big data? Explain that.
I mean, I don't eat it personally, but yes, we definitely have significant data ingestion processes within our industry, whether it's us at home looking at various big data assets, our media owner members, our Adtech members certainly are ingesting a lot of data, big data specifically. And, you know, it's big data is used for fueling the innovation within our industry as it has been within many other industries.
We're chatting tonight with Amanda Dorenberg. She is the president of the Canadian Out-of-Home Marketing and Measurement Bureau, COMB. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Amanda in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Second and 60. We're chatting tonight with Amanda Dorenberg. She's got a reputation for disrupting traditional industries via new and emerging technology. She's currently the president of the Canadian Out-of-Home Marketing and Measurement Bureau. And it's been interesting chatting with her about how out-of-home marketing and advertising has changed so dramatically, both in the way that marketers purchase that out-of-home advertising, but also how the technology of out-of-home advertising has changed, and how we can identify people, or at least postal codes, as they go about their daily activities. It's really quite interesting. Amanda, you talked a little bit about leadership and the role, and you joked that you don't look like the typical leader. Maybe I could ask you about that.
No.
We've talked a lot of late about diversity. And about the challenge of lots of different people achieving leadership positions. You're president of an organization, and you commented jokingly about your hair and your tattoos, that you covered up with your jacket, but your tattoos. Tell me about what type of roadblocks or ceilings have you had to break through?
It's a constant battle, I would say. I think females in technology is one of the few, technology is one of the few industries that there's not a lot of females within, and particularly in the ad tech space. Myself personally, I've been fortunate to not have experienced any type of discrimination or issues from that standpoint. I've just been sort of that anomaly that's like, oh, hey, that's the woman who's leading this cool tech company. That said, there's adversity everywhere within, the advertising industry, whether it's a diversity issue or whether it's a challenge with respect to how organizations are evolving and incorporating diversity and incorporating, the digital transformation with diversity in it. It's a challenge for sure. Myself, on the topic specifically of diversity and inclusion, I would say that I've been, perhaps it's because I'm just one of those people who don't really care what others say or think. So I just speak my mind and do what I'm gonna do as that disruptive voice. Maybe that's why I haven't experienced the challenges as much as many of my other colleagues and many friends within the industry have certainly experienced.
Give me a sense of your career. How did you get started in the industry? Did you get schooled, educated in technology?
Yes. So I graduated high school when I was 16. I moved out of my parents' house 2 days after my 16th birthday, actually. And I took computer programming and systems analysis. It's funny because I got into the tech side of my career because being on my own so young, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I looked at the college programs and they said, here's the average salary when you graduate. And that was the highest salary. So I was like, that's what I'm going to do because I need to support myself. So I did that. And then at the time I was also a fashion model. So I was traveling around the world, fortunately, experiencing the advertising and marketing space, but from a different lens, literally. Seeing how campaigns were created and the back end of how the creative concepts come to life, and being a part of that, I really enjoy. So I came back to Toronto and did a bachelor's degree in marketing, media, and communications. And then I took my first role in the advertising space with Post Media, actually. But when I fell in love specifically with out of home, and I didn't realize this until recently when I wrote an article for Forbes, and I was kind of, pondering and looking retrospectively at my career. I booked as a model a campaign for a major denim company, and I had a billboard at Yonge Dundas Square where my face was on a billboard. And it was the first time I truly saw the media format and appreciated it because I had this really interesting 3D extension on it where there was a skirt that was covering up some of the product that was like leggings and whatnot underneath. And when the wind blew, the skirt blew up. So you saw, you know, the product underneath the skirt. And it was so impactful to me. I still remember to this day, we didn't have Instagram. We had Twitter, but it wasn't like super popular. But if Instagram was a thing then, I feel like it would have been a viral campaign.
Do you still have a picture of it?
I do somewhere, yeah.
We'll have to see it.
I'll share it for sure. Yeah, so that was my entry into it, and then I spent a bunch of time at various different Canadian out-of-home companies, from Titan Outdoor, which was at the time a global company who sold their Canadian assets to a private equity firm, which formed another company, and I built their entire brand from the ground up, their IT infrastructure, their product offering, and then left that organization to do the same thing for a pure play digital out-of-home company, where I developed their entire brand, their product offering, their Adtech and data tech stack, which we sold to Outfront Media. And then I stayed there for about a year and a half and decided to take an entirely different pivot into blockchain, machine learning, artificial intelligence for a couple of years, and was brought back into the out-of-home space with Comb.
Fantastic. What an interesting career. I got to ask you, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but why did you move out of your home at 16?
Oh, I'm an open book, so I'll talk about anything and everything. I moved out of my home because my parents were less than favorable with some addiction issues and very abusive physically issues. So I decided to pack a backpack, and 2 days after my 16th birthday, I was off and running.
These were addiction issues that you had?
No, my parents.
Oh, okay. So you were escaping addiction issues.
I was escaping their addiction and abusive issues, yes.
Do you have a relationship with your parents today?
No, I do not.
Oh, that's a shame. But sounds like you made the right decision by moving out.
It was a great decision. I have no regrets. I mean, I wish them well. I've had various interactions with them, and there was, I mean, you'll see it if anyone who's listening goes to my LinkedIn profile, you'll see that I had brain surgery. So they were obviously there during my brain surgery, and you can read that. But yes, that was the most interaction that I've had with them in about 15, 20 years.
And tell me about the brain surgery. What was it? Glioblastoma or?
No, it was super rare, actually. It's something called brain arteriovenous malformation. So it's deemed unknown whether it is inherited or developed at birth. It's very rare. It happens less than 0.001% of the general population. So I like to think I'm an anomaly in many aspects. But it was 12 years ago now, and I was 26 at the time. Fortunately for me, I was in Toronto, so I wasn't traveling. I was on set at a photo shoot, and just had an immense headache. It felt like someone was stabbing me in the head with a knife. I almost wish that was what was happening, because it was so incredibly painful. And then I just remember blacking out and waking up in ICU at St. Michael's. Thank you, St. Michael's team. You were amazing. And it's essentially like, it's worse than an aneurysm. So I had 2 aneurysms that burst, but it's a tangle of veins and vessels that are not built for blood flow. So ultimately, as you age, the veins and vessels get weaker, and thus cause an aneurysm. And I had 2 different areas of bleeding within my brain, and was very fortunate to wake up and recall everything that happened, but very traumatic time for sure. I had an immediate procedure that stop the bleeding, but I was, I had too much damage to the brain and bruising, etc., blood flow. So I was not functional enough to have surgery until about 6 months later. So I had to stay in ICU and within hospital presence for about 6 months.
Oh my God, you're kidding.
No.
What was that
So it
like?
happened. It was intense. I mean, at one point they did send me home under 24-hour care because they ran out of beds. So they sent me home with an ICU nurse. And I actually lost like 90% of my vision, and I lost cognitive movements on my right side for a period of time. When they sent me home, I had regained my cognitive movement, but I still hadn't regained my vision. And so at the time I was living in a 2-story home. So I had to move a mattress from our spare bedroom onto the floor in the living room because I couldn't get up and down the stairs. And the nurse was just sitting beside me 24 hours a day while I just slept in pain, basically. So that was in June of 2019. And then at the end of September of that year, early October, they booked me for surgery. And I did a full craniotomy. So I have this beautiful scar that I love to show off.
That was only a few years ago.
A few, yeah, like 11.
You said 2019, so maybe it was 20.
Sorry, 2009. I apologize. 2009. 2009. Yeah.
Well, that's quite the story. And you obviously survived that and you're thriving today. Why, how, where do you get this resilience from?
I don't know. I think it's just having to, having been on your own for so long, you just have this enthusiasm for life. You can choose to be upset about certain things. You can choose to be negative. Like at the end of the day, everything is a choice. I could have chose to be upset or, thinking like, why is this happening to me during surgery and being down on this? But, your perspective is everything. And if you're appreciative of your time and what you're here to do, which no one really knows, we're just here to be here and make the best of it. I think that's the best perspective.
What a great
sure where it comes from.
About choosing your attitude. Does that something just came to you, or is that something you read a book about, or some spiritual blah 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 inspired you toward?
None of the above. It's something that I've always lived by. This everything happens for a reason, so make the best of it. And at the end of the day, we're here to do what we want to do and what we need to do. So just enjoy it, love it, make the best of it, live it up, live your life, get tattoos, shave your head, whatever you want to do.
Get tattoos, shave your head. I'm gonna have to go get active.
Love it.
So I'm going to ask you when we come back some questions about, you've been very forthcoming about your personal story, and thank you for that because I think it's very inspiring. I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask you about, where advertising is going to go in the future and some technology issues to finish up our conversation. Okay. So
I love it.
We're going to take a break and come back more with Amanda Dorenberg in just a minute. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Second 960. We're chatting tonight with Amanda Dorenberg. She is the president of the Canadian Out-of-Home Marketing and Measurement Bureau. She's told us really quite a fascinating personal story, as well as her career, and also a lot about what's happened with technology and how technology has really disrupted and changed the out-of-home marketing and advertising business. Maybe, Amanda, I could elevate again and ask you, where do you think advertising in general is going in the next couple of years? We've seen this fragmentation of broadcast media where people are seeming to, watch Netflix and YouTube and Apple TV or whatever, cable news maybe, but the old traditional TV networks are down dramatically. Huge increase in internet media, I presume, Facebook, YouTube, Google, etc. Out of home, print. First of all, how do you segment that in your business? And second of all, what do you think is going to happen? Is Google and Facebook going to own the world?
No, I hope not. But I giggled a little bit to how do you segment this, because when you were highlighting some of the streaming services in our little bubble of advertising that's called OTT, over the top, which is bucketed into all things streaming. So advertising for Netflix, Amazon Prime, whatever your streaming service of the day is, gets bucketed into OTT advertising. And certainly OTT has seen a dramatic increase in advertising revenues, particularly with the onset of the pandemic.
Right.
Everyone was streaming. Like I'm one of the contributors to that, because I don't even have traditional cable. Like I don't even have a TV. I just have a giant, iMac that I stream my TV on with a couch behind me. So I think it's going to be an interesting shift over the next 5 years, particularly. I also always like to include the demographic component to how that correlates to the shift in ad spends, with Gen Zs now, coming into more of a fiscally responsible time within their evolution of life. A lot of them are in their early 20s, between 20 to 25. They're more responsible for a lot of ad spends, ad dollars. They're heavily focused on content creation as a generation. So a lot of dollars are shifting towards those platforms that are content creation focused, TikTok, YouTube, etc. Huge dollars being shifted. And again, those kind of, it's a combination of OTT and let's call it mobile or native advertising dollars. We're going to see a huge continuation of a shift within that. I think traditional broadcast dollars, which would be TV and radio, I think TV will see a slow decline, a continuous decline. I do think traditional radio will continue to either remain flat or see a slight increase, because everybody's looking for streaming services and new radio services.
So I'm on radio, there's a chance for me?
There's a chance for you. You're also on podcasts, so you technically fall under OTT. From my industry perspective, we are set for, as I mentioned, a steady, a slow recovery from COVID, but with the onset of digital and new programmatic digital out of home and data initiatives, out of home was the only traditional media format historically and pre-COVID that was comprised of substantial revenue growth for a 3 to 5 year period. So while everything else from a traditional media format pre-COVID and post-COVID was seen as a flat revenue projection standpoint, out of home was the only media format that was set to be the incline or the hockey stick of growth, let's say, for traditional media. And I do see that continuing.
Really fascinating. Is it a local market, a national market, or a global market today that people have to advertise in?
Depends on what your geography is. In Canada, it's national buys comprise the most of the advertising dollars, but certainly a regional, I wouldn't even necessarily call it a local, regional markets would be secondary to that. In the US, however, it's opposite of that. The bulk of the advertising dollars are regional and local, and national secondary. So it really depends on the market that you're within. Globally, again, it's very dependent on the market. Home and myself, my team sit on the World Out of Home Organizations Committee. So it's basically a collaboration of all of the equivalents of home across the globe. where we get together and we talk about measurements and marketing. And it's a bit of a mixed bag depending on what region you're in. So Australia is very different than, APAC versus, the UAE. So it truly depends on where you are.
You told us that you were for a while in blockchain and artificial intelligence.
I was, yes, I did. I was an executive consultant in blockchain, and we focused specifically on products and startup companies where we would invest in them, or early stage organizations developing solutions built on blockchain and Web 3.0. So I was fortunate to be involved in developing a fully decentralized cryptocurrency marketplace. So this was before NFT as a non-fungible token became popular in the past, 6 months.
So maybe you can explain NFTs, blockchain, cryptocurrency to me sometime.
Absolutely, I would love to.
Let me ask you, one or two last questions, if I could. I apologize. We've only got a few minutes left. You're obviously calling in from downtown. I can see some towers out your window.
Yes.
Is downtown going to come back? I don't know whether you're calling me from an office or a condo, but are people going to go back to downtown living and downtown working?
I mean, I can see Queen West from my office right now. I'm at home, my condo. I literally can see Queen West, and since we reopened, or since we released the official stay-at-home order and retail has reopened, there's been lineups, I'm telling you, blocks long for retail stores every day, 7 days a week.
People really want to get back to their shopping.
Aritzia, Zara, Foot Locker, these retail stores are literally lined up. I can't handle it.
So downtown's coming back.
Coming back.
Okay,
Yeah.
Last question. Obviously, you inspired the young lady that recommended you. If you were chatting with a couple of young females that wanted to be successful in business, what would you tell them?
Stay true to yourself. Don't listen to the chaos. Don't listen to the gossip. Don't listen to anything. Just stay true to yourself, your beliefs, your desires, your passions, and make it happen.
Stay true to yourself and make it happen. Great words. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Well, that's the Brian Crombie Radio Hour for tonight. I come to you every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM, or you can stream me online at saga960am.ca. Or as Amanda said, I've got podcasts. What is that called? Over the Top or something like that? I've got podcasts, and I don't even know what they're called, but videocasts is what I call them, on YouTube, on my website, briancrombie.com. And all my podcasts are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Speakeasy, and anywhere you can get podcasts. Thanks for joining us, Amanda. Thank you so much.